Evening, Mike.
Evening.
So I'd like to welcome you to the Eastern Area Committee meeting. Thank you. I'd like to welcome you to the Eastern Area Committee meeting tonight, the 3rd of February. I'm Councillor Knights, the Chair. I'd like to ask any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback. Any remote participants to keep their camera and microphones off unless they wish to speak, as this can affect the quality of the meeting. The meeting is being live webcast and the recording stays on the Council's website. So welcome everybody to the Hybrid Eastern Area Committee meeting, to everyone who's visiting virtually and in attendance in the Chamber. We've got the following Swale Borough Council officers in attendance, and that is the Chief Executive Larissa Reid, Green Spaces Manager Graham Tuff, and Democratic Services Janet Dart and Billy Attaway remotely. Thank you. The following councillors have been invited, and I can see that we do have Councillor Rich Lehman in attendance. Helen Waitley has sent in her apologies, and I don't know if Councillor Hook is in attendance, but welcome if you are. Welcome to all the visiting parish councillors attending virtually. I can see there's a few of you there, and a special welcome to Louise Barham, Faversham Town Council, and Carol Clayson from Boughton Parish Council, who are in the public gallery. For all the people that are attending virtually, I'd like to introduce the committee, and I will do a roll call, so if you can just say whether you're here. Councillor Bowen. Councillor Gould. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Knights, myself. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor Saunders.
Present.
Councillor Simmons.
Present.
Councillor Thomas.
Present.
Councillor Valentine.
Present.
Councillor Whiting.
Present.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to remind people that if they wish to speak, you'll be invited to speak in turn. Could you please state your name and the organisation you represent? Anyone attending remotely, please mute your microphone until you speak and indicate on the IM. Any member of the public that uses the IM inappropriately may be removed from the meeting. The agenda item 1 is the emergency evacuation procedure. Please be aware of the evacuation procedures to follow in the event of an emergency. There's no scheduled test of the fire alarm during this meeting. If the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly without collecting any of your possessions, using the doors signed as fire escaped, and assembling the car park at the side of the building. Await instructions before re-entering the building. Should anyone require assistance in evacuating the building, please make the Swale Borough Council Democratic Services officers aware of any special needs, so that suitable arrangements may be made in the event of emergency. Agenda item 2 is the apologies of absence. Janet.
We have one apology, and that is from Councillor Hannah Perkin. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 3 is a declaration of interest. Now, does anyone have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests, especially for the organisations that have put the bids in this evening? Councillor Henderson.
I have a non-pecuniary interest as a member of the Faversham Town Council, so we'll speak and vote on the matter.
Thank you. Councillor Saunders.
As with Councillor Henderson, I'm a member of Faversham Town Council. I'm also named as one of the members who've put in a proposal under item 8, along with Councillor Whiting and Gould. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Same as Councillor Henderson and Councillor Saunders, Faversham Town Council.
Councillor Martin.
Funnily enough, as per the previous speakers.
Councillor Thomas. Councillor Bowen?
May I ask a question, just for clarification on this? When we did this last year, the members withdrew from the debate. Do they not need to this year?
Unless an amendment's put in, no, they don't need to withdraw from the debate. Councillor Whiting.
To declare a similar interest from the members did as per. Thank you.
Councillor Gould, ditto, thank you. Agenda item 4 is the minutes. I'll ask the members to agree the minutes of the last meeting held on the 21st of September. Do we agree the minutes? Thank you. So, agenda item 7 of the matters arising. Typo. Agenda item 5, matters arising. I'd like to draw your attention to Appendix 1, the update of the flooding in Whitstable Road area, and ask Councillor Saunders if you'd like to speak on it.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak briefly to the report, and there's a bit of an update at the end as well. So you remember at the last area committee, Helen Whately agreed to set up a meeting with relevant agencies and residents with the Southern Water. It was with particular reference to the flooding in Whitstable Road. That meeting took place on the 12th of November. Unfortunately, it was very soon after the David Amis incident, and I think at the time security was very high. So I was the only representative of the Borough Council that was able to attend. The meeting was constructive, and coming out of that, it was agreed that Southern Water and KCC officers would meet to look at issues in various parts of the town, including Whitstable Road. And there's a list of the people who attended that initial meeting on the 18th of January. The outcome of that meeting was to set up a second meeting to actually visit the catchment areas. A second meeting within the catchment to look at things like outfalls and to lift covers and so on. That second meeting has now taken place, and yesterday Southern Water issued a note about it, which I'm sure we can make available to people on the committee. So basically at that meeting they visited Tanners Street, Church Road, and came up with some suggestions of work there. In relation to Whitstable Road, they didn't visit the site, but they discussed the site, identified work that had taken place previously, also identified that work had taken place in the wreck, and that it probably wasn't a major contributor to flooding. And the next action in relation to that is that KCC have the site on their forward works programme for consideration for further measures to reduce the risk of flooding in consultation with Southern Water. The other thing that's happened is that Helen Whately is proposing to convene a follow-up meeting in order to keep the pressure on Southern Water, which I think is a positive step, because at the moment it's meetings obviously and no particular action as yet. Thank you.
Councillor Simmons.
Are we allowed to ask questions? Could I just, if I am, delighted to hear what Councillor Saunders has just said. Perhaps at subsequent meetings he could get slightly more clarification about the recreation ground, probably doesn't contribute. I mean, I've always contested that it doesn't contribute, and I always thought it was a slightly strange thing to accuse an area of grass like that as being the main source of the problems. And I'd be delighted if we could get slightly better than probably doesn't. Thank you, Chairman.
Could I just come back on that?
Yeah, Councillor Saunders.
Yeah. I mean, the wording that's in this minute from Southern Water is, we agree further action regarding the park is not warranted in the absence of evidence of it contributing to recent flooding. So I think that's fairly clear.
I think when we come to the resident, Mr. Bowers' letter that he's sent in, and evidence with photographs and videos, you'll see that the main entrance at Whitstable Road by Park Road actually is on a slant and does act like a river. So it's not so much the grass area, it's the walkways that comes down, bringing with it the debris that then fill the drains. Councillor Thomas, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to also echo the thanks to Councillor Saunders for his report, but through yourself, Chair, I really wanted to pose a question which may or may not be able to be answered tonight, because I note that in Appendix 1, it notes that Southern Water have committed to develop discrete plans, and discrete plans confused me a little bit. I didn't understand why they were discrete. So I would ask if through yourself, Chair, this committee can gain clarity as to what these discrete plans they are on. Why on earth are they discrete? I'm just a bit cynical, I guess, as to what might be going on and why they call them discrete plans. Thank you.
Would you like to come back on that, Councillor Saunders?
Yes, I would. I think the discrete was my wording, Councillor Thomas, and by discrete I meant that what they were working on was an individual plan for the Tanners Street area, an individual plan for Whitstable Road area, and an individual plan for the Brents area. So they were discrete, 3 discrete plans.
Councillor Henderson.
Yes, if I may, I'm not someone who has detailed knowledge of the Whitstable Road problems, but I do have very detailed knowledge of the Brents problems, and I would just like it to be minuted that they are included in the overall discussions. There are discussions, very fruitful discussions, going on between residents and KCC with some help from me, and we have cooperation from the Environment Agency where it's needed, but finding it very difficult to get Southern Water to take an interest. So I'd just like to be sure that that is there and being pushed.
That's been noted. Thank you. Councillor Whiting.
A very quick one, thank you. And just is it possible through you, Chairman, to invite Southern Water to come here and explain these plans? They can refuse, of course they can, but I think it would be very sensible to ask them to come along and explain exactly what they're doing in relation to the issues that members in Faversham particularly have raised. And I think that would just be an invite that should be sent out with your agreement. And let's see what they say. If they're too scared to turn up and talk to us, well, we can all draw our own conclusions from that, can't we? Thank you, Chair.
I did ask at the last meeting that Southern Water, KCC, Drainage, Graham Tough, everyone met around the table. And I asked Helen Whately to do that they all came here, but unfortunately that didn't happen. What happened was the small meeting that Helen Whately did, which I wasn't even allowed to attend, which I instigated the meeting. So yeah, I agree that I think they should become and talk to us. What we can't do is that every committee asks Southern Water to come and talk. So they're not going to come to everything. That's why I wanted us all to pull together and invite them to one meeting where they will come to, hopefully, discuss the problems we have. Councillor Saunders.
clearly they're working on 3 individual areas at the moment. But there are overall issues, particularly around the development of the town, where it would be their views.
Hello, Chair. I don't know if you can hear me all right.
Councillor Dindal, sorry, yes, I can
Thank
see.
you. I did put it in the chat, but I'm not sure if
I've
anybody's
seen it. I've just seen it. If you'd like to go ahead.
Sure. No, it was just following your conversation then. I don't know if you're aware, but Southern Water made quite a large presentation, I think 2 weeks ago now, to KCC. I have a long document, it's quite technical, but I do have a copy of it if you would like it. I can circulate it or through DEM services. Yeah? But they have met KCC, so I should think that one could say to them, well, you've gone and presented to KCC, why can't you come to Swale and present to us? Just a note for you. Thanks.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at the last meeting, is that if we all start talking together, because obviously I didn't know they'd been to KCC, so that would be very helpful if you could send that to Democratic Services so that we could all see it, and perhaps they could then present it to us at Swale Borough Council.
Will do. Okay.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I quite agree with bringing Southern Water before this committee. I think it's worth remembering that for Southern Water, it's probably worth them attending all the area committees, given that they utilise works in separate locations. So for us, we've got the works in Tenham and Faversham. For Sittingbourne, they've got the works in Sittingbourne, and for Sheppey, they've got works in Sheppey. So actually having somebody who is knowledgeable about their individual operations within each area would be incredibly useful. They have spoken to Cabinet very briefly. Let's face it, it was a waffle presentation from them, just telling us that they're going to spend money without too much specific. And of course, the natural, we'll give you an hour and the presentation is going to take 55 minutes. So yeah, we do need to get them into a forum where they're actually seen by the public to be being brought to account as well. And if they refuse it, they refuse it. But at the very least, having the offer there, if they want to come and sit in that lovely chair that all of us really don't want to sit in, happy days.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chairman. I totally agree, but in terms of getting them in, we've been trying to do that for about 18 months to the scrutiny committee, and so far hit a great big brick wall of absolute silence, it seems, from them. So we have been trying that for exactly that reason, to have the entire council potentially across the entire borough come in, and for them to come and talk to us. But we can't make them come. So if we can, brilliant. I'm not holding my breath that we're going to get them to scrutiny committee now before the end of the year, but I live in hope, you never know. But it's certainly something which we should do in future. My other point, actually, and I congratulate Councillor Saunders for the progress so far. I think, as you say, the challenge is there's a lot of talking that's been going on, and we need to keep this very much on the agenda. And I'm going to pick on him because he's I know he's listening. Councillor Rich Lehman from KCC. We need to keep pressure on KCC and everybody else to actually move this from talking to doing, because with respect, this means nothing really for the residents. And we need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this before I move on to the letter from Robin Bowyer? Councillor Henderson, can you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you. So, Janet, could I hand over to you, please?
Yes, Mr. Robin Bowyer isn't able to attend today, but he sent in a question that he asked to be read out this evening and responded to. We have been informed that following a meeting with Helen Whately MP and representatives from Southern Water, KCC, Swale Borough Council and Faversham Town Council, work is going ahead with Southern Water and KCC working together to address the worsening flooding situation in Whitstable Road. This has been ongoing for 6 years, is well documented and has put our homes at risk. One of the major contributors to the flooding is the excessive water runoff from the recreation ground from the 3 exits on Whitstable Road. Can you please advise what Swale Borough Council is planning to do as the responsible body for the management of the recreation ground to address this and prevent this excessive runoff. As we understand it, a small soakaway was incorporated during the recent renovation of the recreation ground by the entrance exit on the corner of Whitstable Road and Park Road, but this has had no effect. As you would appreciate, this is stressful for residents, as you will acknowledge from the photographs. For those people here, there's a copy of this question and the photographs at the front table as you come in. Thank you.
Graham Tuff, would you like to answer that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Certainly in terms of the recreation ground, the improvement project sort of included not collecting water in curb lines, so all of the curb lines sort of have are straight onto the grass, so we don't have any collection of water in effect, and funneling of water. We did incorporate 3 soakaways and 4 gullies into the project because we weren't able to get permission to add water to the drainage system, which is, given the situation, is perhaps understandable. So let's say 3 soakaways were implemented. They were also tested for percolation rates to make sure that they actually worked and were efficient. So they function. In addition, I think as been mentioned in one of the papers, the former drainage channels from the recreation ground into Whitstable Road have been blocked up and removed from use. I still feel that undoubtedly there is a level of water going into Whitstable Road because of the slope from the recreation ground of the hard surfacing. We're trying to intercept that by the means that I've described. At the present time, we don't have any other plans. I have spoken to KCC in the past about how we can sort of try to help relieve the situation. Unfortunately, I think, as again what has been said tonight, we weren't included in the actual meetings. If there's the opportunity to be involved in the future, then yes, that would be great, because like I said, if we can contribute in some way, then certainly we want to explore that. So that's really where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. This is my ward, and so I do know it in great detail. I've spoke to you about it before. At the entrance, the main entrance there are 2 drains which get full up with leaves and debris quite quickly. Of late, you have been getting them cleared quite swiftly, but the runoff is so severe that it doesn't stop. That those drains do not collect the water quick enough, and it does contribute going into the road, bringing with it debris that then blocks the beanie drains that have been put into Whitstable Road. So it's not sufficient at all, and so it does need to. And I would welcome you to be at these meetings. I'd welcome myself to be at these meetings, actually. Councillor Whiting, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I have to bow to your knowledge as the local member, and to Mr. Tuff and to Councillor Simmons also, who would have previously been in charge of the new works at the recreation ground. All I wanted to do was just to check that the mitigations against runoff and the mitigations call to mitigations of the works that were being carried out as part of the improvements to the recreation ground were seen to be acceptable by all authorities. It strikes me that there's a problem, but that problem may just be a historic one, and caused by other things, development down Whitstable Road, for example, or other issues. So I just want to be sort of clear that the works that were done under the grant that the council received to improve the recreation ground were properly mitigated in accordance with all the requirements of the statutory authorities. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, because it may be simply that this is just a historical thing that has got worse. Climate change, other things may make it worse. So, you know, leaves falling, there's more trees with more foliage and more blockages of drains. But I just trying to understand where the problem is coming from and whether swale properly mitigated in accordance with the statutory authorities any effect that the improvements would have had. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I do know there was a massive soakaway. I saw it being dug and built, and I think extra drains are put in as well. It's, I mean, I'll leave it to you to answer the question, but it's not working. Yes, there are more trees because you planted more trees. There is climate change, but flooding, we've still got to try and stop the flooding from the recreation ground, which we are in charge of, going, you know, onto the main road coming into Faversham and potentially into people's homes, bringing with it the sewage which is Southern Water's problems. Graham, could I bring you back in, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think in response to that, fundamentally the amount of surface space, hard surface within the recreation ground, you know, hasn't changed for 120 years. So to some degree, if this issue has, you know, predominantly been over the last 6 or so years, you know, there's something that has happened in the last 6 or so years that suddenly has meant that this issue is arising. I think that, you know, what we put in place was to some degree a response to needing to take water from the buildings, and like I've said, following sort of application to Southern Water, we weren't allowed to put that into the drainage system. There were no, apart from us sort of checking the percolation rates because we want the system to work, there wasn't any other statutory requirements sort of related to that. So as far as sort of I'm aware, they function. I think the issue is that obviously the climate change, perhaps that rainfall is heavier for longer periods of time and more frequently. So sort of the incidents may be increasing, and the level of flood may be increasing. And that's a contribution from all of those areas, perhaps including the recreation ground. I think the interesting thing is that you know, certainly we haven't, you know, anecdotally, obviously there's the photos, there's the videos that the community have submitted, and yeah, I think, you know, when you go over there during periods of heavy rain, you can see. So, but there hasn't been any real, or certainly not that I'm aware of, any real sort of testing of what that is and how much is coming off the recreation ground, or, you know, somehow measuring discovering where it is, you know, the body of water is actually coming from. So yeah, I feel that there's further work to do there, but how that is achieved is another slightly different issue. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's not just the recreation grounds problem at all, but that's the only thing that we are responsible for, and so we need to address that and see if we can stop as much water coming off, because it's entering the road gets closed. It comes up to my knee. I know I'm short, but it is quite a lot of water on the road. Councillor Martin first, then Councillor Thomas.
So just in terms of a Luddite's answer, I suppose, to the amount of mitigation, the actual amount of hard standing, by my understanding of the recreation ground, was slightly reduced when the works were done, because the windy path was replaced with a permeable or semi-permeable material, which should reduce the amount of runoff coming from that particular location. Obviously, additional drainage has been put in, but we do have to take into account that what we're actually seeing are periods of much longer periods of dry spells, which bake the ground. Being primarily clay soil in this part of Kent, you bake the ground, you reduce the ability of that water to that land to hold water. So when we then get the flash storms, which are becoming more increasing in their intensity and in their frequency, we are going to see more water runoff. Now, how we mitigate against that going forward is going to be very, very difficult. Realistically, you know, going back to when I was a kid, that particular stretch of land, you had one bungalow on it, and you had a drainage channel that went through to the Cookstitch stream that ran out onto the creek, and you had the residue of a garage. And actually, that meant that what flowed off flowed down and flowed straight back out into the sea. Now there's a block of old people's flats and some houses there, and an awful lot of concrete that's replaced what was gardens. And that has to be taken into account as well. You know, was the mitigation of that development adequate? Probably not, actually. And there are also question marks over whether the culvert that ran underneath was suitably maintained. And that is an issue that needs dealing with Southern Water, not anyone else. It is a very frustrating problem, but as we've seen, not just in Faversham, I'm sure we've seen it in some of the villages as well. But you can go down Key Lane, North Lane, South Road, Tanner Street, Forbes Road. You will find these problems becoming more frequent, and it is partially down to the fact that we have combined storm and sewage drainage systems which should not be in place. They need upgrading as soon as possible. We've seen far too many people convert even to artificial grass now. Oh my word, it's just so frustrating. And how long does it take to actually mow a small patch of lawn? And given the amount of absorbency it can provide, it's very frustrating. It's very difficult, and we do need to see an increase in the amount of times that drains are actually unblocked. Again, you know, you're talking with KCC at times 6, 12, 18 months to get a drain unblocked that is getting blocked very regularly. So having them around the table would be very, very useful. And we can shout and scream all we want. I have sympathy for KCC on this point because actually, let's face it, we know here our budget from central government for Swales gone down 10 million over the last 10 years. And no doubt KCC's grant's probably gone down a darn sight more than that.
Yeah, I agree with some of what you're saying, and definitely being Southern Waters, because I've had a report today from Leslie Seeger, who clears out Cookstitch, and I would like it to be noted that the drain that goes from Whitstable Road by those old peoples into Cookstitch is actually blocked, and was blocked when the building. So I would like to see Southern Water run a dye test to see if it does run through, because then your water could come into the road and it would go into Cookstitch. So that's one thing I'd like to see. Councillor Gould, please. Sorry, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Just to kick off, I have great sympathy for the gentleman who's written his letter in, and I know he's one of your neighbours, and sympathy with yourself as well, having to put up with all the flooding outside your properties. I do agree with Mr. Tuff's comments about the wreck and Councillor Simmons's comments. I do believe a lot of the flooding is probably caused by surface water coming down Whitstable Road. I know when I lived in Cypress Road and my garage was flooded down there, I was told at the time, due to all the water coming down Whitstable Road and heading up Cypress Road. So I tend to think it's the surface water from the recreation ground is a minor contributor, in my opinion, to the overall flooding down there. But I think the overall responsibility lies with Southern Water and the issues that Councillor Martin has already highlighted. So thank you, Chair.
Councillor Whiting, please.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to come back. I think the comments, I can concur with every comment we made. And again, it's another reason we're getting Southern Water to come here and talk about these things. But I'd be grateful for any comment that Councillor Lehman has as KCC and what pressure, because KCC are responsible for surface water flooding. And it would be useful to perhaps, if he's willing, to hear from Councillor Lehman as to how we might together all take this forward to come to a solution that meets the residents' expectations. Thank you, Chairman.
Can I have Councillor Bowen first, and then if Councillor Lehman would like to speak, could you indicate in the IM, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lehman's not unmuted, so I think that's an indication he does. My comment is actually been mentioned a couple of times, and from what Graham said, is it's obviously a real big problem, but we're only guessing of what the actual cause is. We don't know whether it's the recreation ground. We don't know if it's coming off from somewhere else. It's coming from somewhere. So wouldn't it be better to actually find out where it is coming from and then doing something about that? And if it's to do with the fact, as it is across most of the country, or large parts of the country, because we are building so much that that's causing a problem. It's happened in my ward in Tenham with the Bopper Station Road. We've had flooding down there, and I think it is due to houses being built. It's a common growing issue. But until we actually do a study, and if a study is possible from getting experts in to actually find out, okay, where is this water coming from? Let's not blame the wreck when it may not be the wreck. Let's not blame Wisball Road or another road if it's something else. And until we know what that something else is, we can't really do very much. Thank you.
Councillor Lehman would like to come in.
Hi, yeah, I think Councillor Martin made a very good point, which is something that matches with my personal experience, which is that both KCC and Swales budgets have been stretched so thin, it's very difficult to take any meaningful action. I was at Doddington. I visited Doddington Parish yesterday afternoon to meet with a member of the flood risk management team to look at flooding there. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the fact that the village there was flooded very badly in 2018, and they're still waiting for some remedial works to be done. And we went for a tour around the parish, looking at different areas where improvements might be made, but you kind of left doing the cheaper, possibly less effective, but might do the job works rather than the works you'd actually like to do because the budgets aren't there for them. But I also agree with what Councillor Bowen just said. It would make sense. I don't know how easy it would be or how viable it is. It definitely makes sense to work out exactly where the problem is originating before you go trying to fix things. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Saunders.
Well, as speaking as the Cabinet Member for the Environment, I think the key point is that as a borough, as members have said, we're keen to work with KCC and Southern Water to try and resolve the issues. And obviously, if there is anything we can do to help with the recreation ground, we'll be aiming to do that.
So would a letter from the Cabinet Member for Environment to KCC and Southern Water help? Was it something you could do, Councillor Saunders?
Certainly, I could send a letter kind of related to the discussion we've had this evening and the issue raised by residents. I mean, I think clearly KCC and Southern Water have started to have site meetings to look at the issues, and I think we can offer that probably Graham, would be happy to be involved in those, and to that we will do anything we can to help resolve the situation.
Thank you, Councillor Whiting.
Just a very quick proposal, really, then, Chairman, just to perhaps wind this up. The committee agrees to ask the Cabinet Member to write to the relevant people at KCC and at Southern Water to find a way to resolve the issue, which is clearly not just Whitstable Road, but it's other parts of the borough too. These flooding issues. I'd formally propose that.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simmons. And can we all vote, please? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you, Graham, for coming tonight. The agenda item 6 is the public forum. The purpose of this agenda item is to enable members of the public.
Sorry, Chair. Before we moved on, I was going to just make sure that we'd done the proposal to invite Southern Water to come in. I don't think we'd formally done that.
I'll second that, councillor. Yes, I'll second that too.
Thank you. Agreed. Where was I? Right. Agenda item 6 is the public forum. The purpose of this agenda item is to enable members of the public to direct questions to me or suggest agenda items for future meetings. So have we got any members of the public attending virtually that would like to speak on this? In the gallery would like to speak? Agenda item 7 is the local issues to be raised. Does any councillor have any issues to raise on behalf of the local residents or communities? Councillor Whiting.
Just a quick one, and it relates to flooding also. I know that the Pond Golf Centre is struggling at the moment because there's a culvert which is supposed to release water out into the soil being blocked, and therefore to prevent seawater ingressing in and affecting land. I just think it's something for the ask office to look at. I know the EA are aware of this, KCC is aware of it. It does cause issues in Tom with flooding in certain fields. And it would be helpful if this committee, the relevant authorities, report back to us what they are doing to sort this problem out. It clearly is, I mean, it's a financial problem probably for the golf centre. I'm not terribly concerned about that. But if people are unwittingly or wittingly blocking a drainage culvert or some sort of other culvert, I think that it would be helpful if we could understand that and put pressure on the authorities to get it dealt with. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. It was on the subject of the PCSOs that we've got in the eastern area. They're very active, and as far as I can tell so far, they're doing a very good job. And a number of them cover the wards that we all represent here. And I know the PCSOs in Faversham send reports to Faversham Town Council. Could we have an overall report that covers our eastern area? It's just to highlight the issues they found and what solutions they're trying to tackle those. There must be something, police matters, that we all are interested in and affect all of our wards. Thank you.
Okay, Democratic Services will look into that and report back. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, it's just a brief one for everyone's heads up, really. As of tomorrow, the formal consultation on reducing the speed limit on the Ashford Road in Faversham from 40 to 30 miles an hour will finally be opening. So please do put your comments in. As I know many of us, I know Councillor Simmons, for example, asked about this a few years back as well when he was ward member, and myself and obviously Councillor Thomas as well. So if you do get a chance to have a look at KCC's traffic orders and pop a comment in, please feel free.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chairman. Kind of hanging a hat on this one slightly for one that we may want to come back to, but I would be, again, this is across the entire area. I would be very interested to see if we can have a report or an update on what the take up has been for the defibrillator grants across the borough, specifically in this area though, but not in, just see how it's, but also to actually, if we can, and if it's possible, it should be possible, to actually almost see a map roughly of where we have defibrillators available for people to use, and then potentially for maybe next year, think about how we might be able to sort of close that gap if there is a particular area where is lacking. I think that would be a useful one going forward. I know there are loads out there, but I don't know whether we actually have a list or if we have any idea where they all are. I know for Wynnington we've got, I think 3 or 4 actually. So in Tennant itself, we've certainly got 2. In the ward, we've got, I think, maybe up to 6 dotted around. But it would just be, I think, it'd be useful to have that sort of understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Faversham Town Council had a list. Did you want to come in, Councillor Henderson?
Well, it was only to make that point that there are some 15 or even up to 20 in Faversham, and there is a list of those in the town hall window that anybody can look at. So we can pick up the Faversham Town Council area very easily.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I have on my iPad the map of Faversham, and there are actually 29 that are available for use in Faversham defibrillators. The maps do exist.
I thank you, Chair. I was just going to support Councillor Bowen. I think there is a little bit of job of work to be done to assimilate a map that encompasses everything. I know that sports clubs, have them in their clubhouses. I know that parish councils have them in their village halls and elsewhere. So I think it would be a very good piece of work to understand that and then direct any available funding to those areas that are perhaps less well served than other areas. So fully support Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Gould.
Thank you. Presumably, all of the defibrillators are ones which are activated by dialing 999, so the emergency services are aware of where they all are. Is that? I just wanted to double check that whether that was the case when they're put in places.
Yeah, Larissa.
We were just saying the same thing. We think so, but we're not certain. But we think that the NHS or certainly the emergency services should have a list, and we will endeavour to make contact with someone to find that out and do something. I suppose the issue that we have is when we have the list, what we do with it. It would be great to come here, but maybe we can then circulate it to parishes or put it on our website that people can print off or something.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chairman. In which case, can I make a formal proposal that we have this at a future area committee meeting once we've actually done the groundwork? Just to be clear, in terms of when I refer to defibrillators, I'm talking about exactly those which will be used or on the list of the NHS and probably on a public building or made available to the public. So I'm not looking at those in a sports hall that's going to be locked away for hours and hours and hours, but actually is there potentially 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because they're the ones which really count. But I'll make that proposal to come back to a future meeting once we've done that one. And it's a role which says ward members, we've probably got a pretty good insight in our own wards as well. So I don't think it's going to be that between the NHS, between us, I think we can build a pretty good picture pretty quickly. Thank you.
Yes, and yes, agreed. Thank you. Can I just go to Julian Speed, who's said in the IM, how can defibrillators be protected from theft? We had a situation where ours was stolen. Could anyone answer that? Councillor Gould.
As I say, most of the new ones that I've seen put in are activated by dialing. You dial 999 and they give you a code to open them. They're in a sort of locked cabinet, is how I understood. That maybe we ought to make sure that any ones we fund are done in that way and are linked automatically to the NHS. There's no point in having defibrillators funded which just sit on a shelf. Then they need to be actively integrated with the system.
Does that answer your question, or do you want to come back, Julian Speed? Thank you. Councillor Valentine.
I just wanted to suggest that if we're collecting information about defibrillators, also collect information about who is had a fatality. That's unclear.
It's noted. Thank you. Is there any more on this agenda item, or can we move on?
Just check that there is a proposal from Councillor Bowen.
Yeah, can we have a vote on it then, please?
Accepting the points that have been made, which I think.
Is it agreed by all? Thank you. Agenda item 8 is the update on the work plan, the funding allocations of 2021-2022. I assume that everyone has read the proposals. Are there any questions? Councillor Bowen.
Not a question, but I don't know how you're going to handle it, but I do have a comment on them. So I don't know whether you want that now or later on, however you're going to do this.
Yeah, can you go ahead, please?
Okay. I am slightly disappointed that we only had 5 applications come in, but they're all, I think, good to varying degrees, in my opinion, good applicant and worthwhile applications. I think there's, again, something we may want to think of next year, how do we actually promote this further and try and get a bit more interest, because with respect, certainly 2 of these were also in terms of the applicants from last year as well. So the maximum is 3 new people who've applied for a grant. In terms of the proposals, I say I can support all of them, and I have got a proposal in terms of, I think, which will also help with the residual money as well.
We have got some other proposals which I was going to go into once we've decided on the.
The one that I'm slightly less, not in favour, not unfavourable to, because I think, again, if we had more applications, it would be lower down my list. With respect, are those from Faversham Town Council, which is a council that could achieve all of this. I think we had the same points last year without applying for a grant. It seems that they are looking to promote tourism and green initiatives within the town council at Swale Borough Council's expense, and making potentially a small income from it at Swale Borough Council's expense. Now, I wholeheartedly support the idea behind it, but if there is any income, it should come back to Swale Borough Council, in my opinion. And I say I will be supporting it, but I think they could have done it themselves. Thank you.
I think one thing we must be mindful of is that we cannot roll this money over. We need to spend it, and we can't make people apply for things. So if we do have applicants and we don't give them the money, then we lose that money. So all we can do is promote, and we did promote it rather well the first year, because we were I've seen you, Councillor Whiting, we was oversubscribed by a hell of an amount last time. We have got other applications which I will go into, and there is time for other applications. But on the agenda tonight is whether we agree these ones that have been put in well within time, because we've had to open it up again because we've still got money. So the questions that tonight are not whether or not we should say that they've applied before. It's whether or not we agree to spend this money with them or to lose it. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Chair. Very much support what Councillor Bowen has just said. I mean, and you say we've got this money, we must spend it. Well, it's not our money. It's the ratepayers' money. And if people don't apply for it and want it, then we can save the ratepayers a few quid by not spending it. And I do object to going out to a second round just simply because we got 10,000 or 13,000 in the bank to say, oh, we are undersubscribed, please come forward. Well, there was a deadline and all the organisations knew there was a deadline, and it's not my money, it's not your money with respect, or this committee's money. It's the public's money. And if the organisations don't apply for it, then we can do the public a favour by simply putting it back in the kitty and not raising the council tax or not doing something else or being able to do something else that is a council priority further down the line. So like Councillor Bowen, I will support all of the applications here tonight. I certainly don't support going back out to tender again to find more people because the deadline has passed, and getting the money through the system by the end of the financial year and by the end of the civic year is going to be a bit of a challenge. I also agree with Councillor Bowen totally that Faversham Town Council has an uncapped ability to raise money from the taxpayer. We don't in Swale. We have a limit of, I think it's 2.99%. Faversham Town Council can raise as much money as it wants. It could put 20 quid on the precept next year and know what it's not against the law. And if they wanted to do things they want to do, they could do it by raising their precept and being accountable to their residents. So I agree with Councillor Bowen that where we're going on this is simply allowing precepting authorities to come to us to say, can you subsidise us, please? Because we don't want the bad rap when we put the rates up. And that's what they would have to do to fund these projects tonight. Now, I am, like Councillor Bowen, I'm going to vote for these tonight. I'm not going to vote that we extend the deadline to get more applications in. I'm going to vote against that. But I do think in future, and it's one for the Chief Exec and the leader, he's not on the call, but hopefully he'll get the message. I do really think that we need to consider applications from precepting authorities. And some of these aren't even match funded. We do need to consider that more carefully in the rules we draw up, because people like Sue Pitto, who's claiming money for something that she can't raise otherwise, why would we object to that? Of course we wouldn't, but there is a serious doubt in my mind that that Faversham Town Council or any other parish council that can raise the money it needs by completely legal means should do so before they come to us for assistance. The only downside for them is they are then responsible to their electors and the next town or parish council electors to say, do you know what, we've put your rates up 3p because we want to do this. Well, and that's acceptable. I know that parish councils have. Upchurch was one. They wanted to spend £40,000 on new lighting. And they had a parish meeting and they got the public in and they all agreed that £40,000 was a good thing to do, and they would put the precept up for 5 years to pay for it.
Yeah, okay.
So
Councillor White, I get the gist of exactly what you're saying.
So I agree.
It's very difficult to change the rules when they've actually hit the criteria. I would just like to hand over to Larissa to just update you.
So members of this committee have, so the idea of the committee money was not as a grant pot. It was for the committee to be able to carry out works in a specific area that the committee wanted to do in whichever means the committee thought was appropriate. So that could be giving a grant to somebody to do something that you wanted them to do. And I think one of the grants that we've got tonight, one of the applications is 3 councillors would like something done, etc. I understand your point, Councillor Whiting. I have parish councils ringing in my ears that say if we have to pay for things that unparished areas don't have to pay for, we are being taxed twice. I've worked with parish councils for a number of years, so I thought I would say that before they all said it, which is a fair point. And we do need to be careful. The purpose of this is to enable this committee to do things in the eastern area that might be very different from what the western area or Sittingbourne or the island want to do. And if a means of doing that is by giving money to a parish council or a precepting authority, then that is up to this committee to do. The other thing is, as councillors, you will all know from when you signed up for being councillors, you all have a, and I can never say this word, so please forgive me, fiduciary duty, which is it is all public money. And when you give public money or spend public money, you do it knowing that you are getting the best value for spending public money. So I think that is what the guiding principles you must work to. There isn't anything in the rules that say you can't give money to parishes. The fact that somebody can raise the money may colour your opinion as to whether you feel you should give them the grant, but the rules will allow you to do it because it is enable them to carry out works or do something that is of benefit to the eastern area that you as a committee feel you want to do specifically for the eastern area. I hope that helps. If you've got any other kind of specific points, please make them simple and then ask me.
Apologies, Chairman, if I can very quickly, just to clarify, I am going to support all of the all of these things tonight. I just ask that we consider in the future, perhaps as part of the new constitution when it's written in May, how we proceed with this in such a way that we are not simply giving money.
Yeah, I agree.
But
if I could just let other councillors speak, I agree with you. But tonight we can only do what we agreed in our rules when we started. Councillor Gould, and then Councillor Martin, and then Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think Larissa's made the point that I was about to make about the fact that money given, if we can't give money to precepting authorities, then we've excluded an awful lot of parishes over the entire borough, and it'll be sort of central Sittingbourne and maybe one or two others that are the only places that could therefore be beneficiaries of this money if that rule is applied, and I can't see how that is sensible. This is about helping bring forward ideas and things which will enhance the area, and that may well include ideas which are outside the normal running of the town council. And I think we should welcome the fact that there are initiatives like this coming forward, which the town council are enabling, especially one like the e-bike hire, which will benefit people for a much wider scheme than just the town council. And further, the point that the money from the thing it clearly states in the proposal it's not an income. They're going to earmark that money for the maintenance and improvement of that service. So I can't see how that could really be represented as a funding to provide an income to the council. It's to ensure that the scheme doesn't run into the ground once the funding has been handed over. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Martin.
Just to start, I will point out that I was not involved in any decision making around the bids for the town council's bids. But I would point out first and foremost, of 5 bids, 3 are parish councils. Of the £33,000 bid for, only 12,870 wasn't parish councils. Parish councils, much like the district council and no doubt the county, will see opportunities through the year and go, we've got a project that we can use that for. When the government announces a levelling up bid potential pot, there'll be one from Swale for Sheppey. That's something that's being worked on. When a parish council sees that this council is giving out grants for whatever purpose, rightly their staff will turn around and go, there's a project that we've thought about, we can get this funded. Now, yes, they can go to their ratepayers and say we're going to increase the rates next year or whatever. And no doubt at times they do, and I know that Faversham has over the last few years done so to pay for set projects. But these two projects in particular go beyond the town council boundaries. It is about doing something to bring active travel and the ability to hire an e-bike, not just to Faversham, but to the eastern area, to try and get everyone actually unified a bit more, a bit better than has been the case in the past. I think all these projects are very worthy. I do concur with our chief exec. The funding for these for all the area committees was based on the area committees setting their own priorities and how they spend that funding. We were asked at the first meeting of this year whether we would consider spending any of that funding on assisting with the backlog of works in closed churchyards in the eastern area, and we said that wasn't a priority for this committee. And then we decided we would do grants. And as it is, the people that have applied for grants are parishes primarily. They've come together with some very good proposals, in my opinion. I'll fully support them. What we then do with the leftover lolly, if you will, as the term I think from Bargain Hunt would be, is a matter for the committee further down the road. But I think the proposals that are on the table fit what we said earlier in the year, what our priorities were about promoting active travel and sustainable travel. It makes sense to support these projects.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, would you like to speak?
Yes, I'm slightly mystified by all of this because, of course, I wasn't here when it all started. But I am concerned at the direction we're going. I too am very supportive of allowing parish councils into this process, and it would be my intention to support all of the bids before us. But I'm a bit worried that you, Chair, said, well, we'll be considering other bids later. I don't know how many other bids are in existence now which missed the deadline, but what I do know is that they missed the deadline because the whole process was so badly promoted. So I really am concerned that it appears you're saying, and the indication given to me was that we could not consider other bids tonight. And I'd like to confirm whether that is the case, or whether indeed, if we wish to, we could. And I'm even more concerned, and it's about the only point where I agree with Councillor Whiting, that promoting it even further, we may be sitting here next month looking at 50, £100,000 worth of bids from people who had never heard of this scheme. And I'm concerned at the number of steps we've got ourselves into because it actually wasn't run very well. So can I have some clarity of where we are? What other bids are in and what value do they have? And indeed, who are they? Can we discuss those bids tonight? And if we can, we could get the whole thing sorted out tonight and move on.
If you could turn, thank you. If I can give you some history, when we did the last round of the funding, we was over double. We had more. Well, you said you didn't. We had more people bidding for it than we had funds, so it was well publicised. We also went out to all parish and town councils, asking all their councillors to publicise it. So it has been publicised. Tonight we've got these bids that have fitted the criteria, because they all have to go through a scoring process. that left a remainder of 13,470. We have got 2 more bids that have not been assessed yet, so they can't be voted on, and they are the Faversham pools for 8,670 and the Friends of Ore Gunpowder Works for 4,800, which still leaves us with 1,284. So what we're asking tonight is that we have a proposer and seconder that we can put to a recommendation for the vote that all these bids are funded. So once we was going through that, then we're going to go on to see if anyone else had any other projects they want to put on the table that could then go for scoring to come back. The bids need to be in by the 17th of Feb, and then they would come back to the March meeting to be voted on the 22nd. So what is on the table right now is whether we have a proposer and seconder to put to the recommendation of a vote for the bids that you see before you. And then we can move on to the money that's over.
Madam Chairman, can I propose that we accept the bids and approve the bids that are on the table before us this evening?
So you propose, so can I have a seconder? And can I have a vote then, please?
One of the options could be agree these. If the committee so decides, could we actually revisit some of these and possibly actually top them up a bit more?
We would need to still, it's yes, on the application, it's not on that figure isn't on the application. The figures that are within the applications are supported with quotes. So it is quite complex, and all of those quotes have been checked. So we couldn't just say, well, we'll give you an extra £1,000 because that money needs to be backed up with what it's going to be spent on to make sure that it meets the criteria. Because if they have £1,000, say that they don't need, they may spend it on something that doesn't meet the criteria that was set by the committee.
Councillor Henderson.
Trying to make, if I may. Can you just give me those 2 figures again for the applications we have in from Faversham Swimming Pools and the Ore Gunpowder Works?
Right, we've got 2 bids that have not been assessed yet,
No, I appreciate
so we don't know whether they fit the criteria at this present time, so we can't vote on them. And that's the Faversham pools for 8,670 and the Friends of the Ore Gunpowder Works for 4,800.
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Whiting. You've spent about half the meeting talking. You might let people finish.
Councillor Valentine, please.
I just wanted to make the point about the bids from Faversham Town Council, that they are very much, so these are the bids for the e-bike and for the cycle storage for people who can't store a bike at home. They're very much the sorts of initiatives we want to support our action plan on. We can't deliver them without partners and councils stepping up and doing this. So I really welcome them. I'd love to see more bids like this from other parish councils. And using the money for the area committees to deliver the priorities of the administration is what I understood these committees were really very supportive.
Right, thank you very much. Well, we're short on time, so we need really to go to the vote. So we've got a proposer of Councillor Whiting and we've got a seconder of Councillor Simmons. We need to do recorded votes. So Councillor Bowen.
Agreed.
Councillor Gould.
Agreed.
Councillor Jackson.
Agreed.
Councillor Knights. Agreed. Councillor Henderson. Agreed. Councillor Martin.
Agreed.
Councillor Saunders.
Agreed.
Councillor Simmons.
Agreed.
Councillor Thomas. Councillor Valentine.
Agreed.
Councillor Whiting.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
I remain worried about reopening this whole setup, particularly because you said that it was promoted through parish councils, town councils, and presumably individual Swale Borough councillors. We have 2 more bids, which add up to £13,470, which roughly matches what is left in the pot. I appreciate those bids need to be assessed and need to be given their points, as it were, on the assessment process. But I see no logical reason to reopen that again. And so could I suggest we at least consider saying, providing these 2 bids are eligible, that we accept those as well, and then we're covered. And if there's fourpence halfpenny left at the end of the day, that can go back in the pot.
Well, we can't vote that hasn't been, we don't know it fits the criteria, so we can't vote to say it does if we don't know.
No, we can vote if we wish, however, to say provided that it fits the criteria.
Councillor Saunders.
I think we're distributing public money here, as Councillor Whiting actually said at the beginning of the debate, and I think we need to be open and transparent, regardless of the merits of the 2 organisations, which I'm sure we all agree are really valuable organisations for our area. I mean, these organisations are off, as far as I could judge, have off their own back decided to put in applications. There are plenty of other worthy organisations in the area who would like the opportunity to get funding as well. And I just feel we have to have some fresh process which is open and transparent. I'm also slightly concerned that we're talking about 2 organisations which I suspect a number of us, not me, are actually either trustees of or involved of. So I think before we have any further discussion, if people are involved in these 2 organisations, it would probably be helpful if they told the rest of us that.
Yes, Larissa, would you like to speak on that?
So, as it's been said, this is public money. What you know about these bids is a figure and an organisation. You can't make a decision that is a safe decision without knowing what you're deciding on. And that's something that would put us open to challenge. There has to be a process, and that process may be that if we just said yes without knowing, other people could say, well, if I knew it was that easy, I would have done it. But also, if challenged, what did you agree to? I'm not sure how many of you could say what you actually agreed to, other than you agreed to give a sum of money to an organisation. So my advice to the committee is it would be an unsafe decision to make a decision where you don't actually have the detail of what you're deciding on. So I think, Janet, there is a process. We have time where we can, it's a short amount of time for any other people that might be aware, that want to put a bid in, that then can go through the process. Because as officers, we would be failing in our duty if we didn't give members the appropriate information to be able for you to make a safe and legally sound decision. So that is why, Councillor Henderson, my advice to the committee, and it is only advice, is that you can in your head support those 2 organisations, but until you have the detail of what the applications are, I would suggest it is unsafe to make a decision supporting it, even with caveats, because we don't know enough.
I did, if you recall, say I was looking at that, and could I have advice and comment on how best to do it? And I accept your comments entirely, Larissa. I'm still dubious about pushing it out, looking for even more application.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm really strongly against making any decision about the money which is left in the kitty this evening. I think that would be, I will be voting very strongly against that. The logical thing to do would be to actually to roll that money forward to next year. Now, I know that the rules of the area committees say that it cannot be rolled forward. And I've always strongly argued against that particular rule. I've had a lot of experience with helping the health service in the past, and this business about not being able to roll money forward, I think is absolutely ridiculous. But that is as it is. I am aware of other organisations who have seen the papers for this evening's meeting have been on the website. I am aware of other people who have seen that there is £13,000 left over. Oh, what's going to happen to that? It cannot be rolled forward. Can we put in an application? Apparently they can, provided it's in by the 17th of February so that it can be properly assessed, so that this committee can consider it in the proper way, with due diligence, with it having been properly approved by the whatever it is, the scoring. I'm losing the word for whatever it is, the wording. So I'm totally against what is being talked about. Thank you, Chairman.
And also the review group is still in existence, so we can put things back to the review group if you want things changed going forward. Councillor Byrne, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I agree. We cannot possibly make any decision on these two or any other application. I think, in my opinion, and it kind of connects. We've got a bid on here regarding about bus services, so I'm going to use it as an analogy. We have a bus timetable. If you go to the bus stop at that appropriate time and that bus turns up, you get on, you go with it. If you miss the bus, you wait till the bus timetable is due to arrive next time. These people have missed the getting on the bus. They have missed the deadline to put a submission in. And now we're changing the bus timetable to, oh no, we'll bring the bus back. You've missed it, but we'll come back to you so you can get on and do a bit more. Councillor Wine said this is public money. We're just almost, we've got it left, we'll chuck it out here and there without any sort of real thought. They've missed the deadline, which then shows, I think, in terms of the organisation of these grants. This committee started meeting after the annual council last May, but the process for this, if memory serves, only started in September. There's an error there. We need to get this process next year starting as soon as possible, so we're not waiting until November, December, January or February to make decisions about funding. In my opinion, we should not afford either of these proposals at all, because they've missed the bus. Get on the bus next year when it hopefully will come back. That's my 10 pence, but I do think we've got to look at the timetable for these because it's failed miserably. Thank you.
I think going forward, we can take it back to the review committee, but I think to round this up tonight, I'd like to propose that we, with the remainder over, we leave that those two bids to go forward, and if anyone else has got any other suggestions for people that can go for the remaining, which would be 1,228, I'd like to propose that we do leave this open so that Faversham Pools and the Friends or Gunpowder Works can go forward to be assessed by the officers and to come back to the March meeting where we vote on it. So I'd like to propose that we do this, and I'd like a seconder.
You seem to be suggesting that only the 1,200 was available.
No.
To other organisations.
My proposal is that these two bids should be allowed to go forward, and any other bid that you've got on the table tonight or anyone else comes forward with before the 17th of Feb can go forward. They can all be assessed, and then it'll come back to the March meeting where we will vote on where we give the money. At the moment, there's only 1,284 if you take away the 2 bids on the table that may not even go through the process. So my proposal is that we let Faversham Pools, the Friends of the Gunpowder Works, go to be assessed, and any other ones that you have on the table tonight or that come forward before the 17th of Feb to then be assessed, all to come back to the meeting in March for us to then vote on.
I'm just asking, Chair, you're not saying that in the event that the 2, I think what Councillor Saunders is asking is, in the event that those 2 are compliant, they don't automatically go through.
No.
They are in with, if we get £50,000 worth of bids, they don't have any preferential treatment. We acknowledge they're on the table now. Is that correct? Is that what you were asking, Councillor Saunders? Sorry, Chair.
I'm glad you understood me. So I proposed it, Councillor Henderson seconded it. So do you want to speak on this before we vote? So Councillor Bone first. Councillor Bone speak and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking to this proposal, and so I will not support this because, quite frankly, it feels what we're making up as we go along here. I come back to the point. There was a deadline that was set out in writing for people to apply, and we've missed it. And now we're making up, because we've still got this money, we're now changing the goal, moving the goalposts to accommodate something, and we're making up as we go along.
Thank you, Councillor. You've made that point, and so you can vote accordingly. You have
with respect, Chair, Councillor Bone is entitled to speak.
Yeah, he has been said that a few times, so we need to just round this up now. And so have you.
Not be closed down.
So what did you want to say about your, you've got an interest? Yeah.
I'm the Borough Council's, one of the Borough Council representatives on your Gunpowder Works, so
I don't think that is an interest, because it's not really going forward tonight. We're then Councillor Henderson with the pools, so there's no interest to be declared tonight because they may not even get funding going through.
I'm just erring on the side of caution. I'm sure the Chief Exec would want me to do so. Like Councillor Bowen, I'll be voting against your proposal, Chairman, with regret, because I feel that the bus has left, and what we're doing is finding ways to spend council taxpayers' money just to find a method to doing it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's noted, because you said that before. Councillor Jackson would like to speak.
I haven't said really much this evening. I've actually not had a chance until now. So I would just like to say, so for clarification, we are saying that the bids are open until the 17th of February. Anybody can apply. Exactly.
That's correct. So can we take this to a recorded vote, apart from Councillor Whiting, who's left the meeting? So Councillor Bowen.
Against.
Councillor Gould. Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Knight, 4. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Saunders.
4.
Councillor Simmons.
4.
Councillor Thomas. Councillor Valentine.
4.
And Councillor Whiting's left the meeting. That is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 9 is the matters referred to the committee by the Cabinet. Are there any, Janet?
No, there are none.
Agenda item 10, the matters referred to Cabinet by committee. Is there anything that anyone wants to refer? Councillor Simmons?
Yeah, Chairman, I think you said just now that the area committee review group is still in operation, and so I think this evening's meeting has been clearly slightly fractious, and I think it would be good to have some sort of a better process for looking at bids and for generally conducting business. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Yeah, I agree. I think the bids section always has been a bit like that. Councillor Valentine.
I was just wondering, it's not really specifically on this issue, but I was wondering if you can remind us so that we can advise organisations how they make their bids.
I can, if you've got any organisations that you know of who would like to make a bid, if they get in touch with me, I can send them the application forms and guidance notes.
Councillor Bowen.
Just come back to the proposal earlier, even about defibrillators, whether there's something which for the cabinet to also potentially pick up on that point as well.
Yeah, noted. Thank you. The date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 22nd of March at 7 p.m, but we need suggestions for future venues. Bearing in mind, if you want hybrid ones, then it needs to be here. But also, you know, we want to get out into the community. So does anyone want to speak about where we'd like the next meeting to be? Right. As long as the committee are in attendance, we can be anywhere. So we can be like in the community hall, as long as the people who are voting have got to be in physical attendance. So it doesn't have to be here. It can be in West Faversham or wherever. So, but if we want other people to attend virtually, then the only place we can do a hybrid meeting would be here. So it's where the committee would like the next meeting to be, whether you'd like it here to be hybrid or out in the community, which would all be face to face. Parish councillors that are in this meeting, if you'd like to make suggestions in the IM, that'd be very helpful. Councillor Bowen.
It comes back again, I think, in terms of members of the public being able to access this meeting. I haven't here tonight. With respect, we have two members of the public, and thank you for coming. We've got, I know there's a number of councillors up there. We had 7 people up there at the moment dialing virtually. When we go back a year, we had a lot more people dialing in virtually. I still find, I know it's mentioned before, I think it is very, very short-sighted for this council is not going to look to invest potentially in, and it's not that expensive. And we can, as long as there's a Wi-Fi signal in the place, we've got our own laptops, we can connect to a Teams meeting without too much difficulty. It's not beyond the realms of possibility to be able to have people be able to dial in and watch. Don't need to be able to focus a camera on individuals, but they could watch a room potentially and see the proceedings and tick both boxes, which means we can go back to our area, not have it here, but also still allow people to dial in. So I think hybrid is the way forward, but not necessarily hybrid in this place.
Larissa, would you like to speak on this?
So we're currently looking at something called the Owl, and it's called the Owl because it looks like one, bizarrely, and when you switch it on, it goes tweet through. It really is. But that is something that, as long as you have a TV screen, so you can see people like that, and you have Wi-Fi, we can take it wherever we would like to go. It doesn't do zooming in, it does room view. We are actively looking at that, and we are talking. So I have this week been talking to another council that are using it to see. The issue that we have is the number of community halls that have Wi-Fi, and I've asked the question about using it on a mobile device where you tether, and it is really unstable on a tethering situation. We are actively looking at that, Councillor Bowen. It's just that we haven't got it set up and working yet, and to have a meeting in what is in effect 6 weeks' time it wouldn't be possible, but it is something we are actively looking, because it is very important that we are able to do that.
I think with that in mind, then there's only one option. It's going to have to be here.
I've also got in the IM, Councillor Ferrell and Councillor Speed have asked for it to be hybrid, which means here. Councillor Gould, you've got your hand up. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, it's just to back up Councillor Bowen on this one. I do concur. It would be nice to get back in the community. I understand that it's taking time, and we say that it can only be room view. If you actually look at the screen tonight, it's only been room view because we don't have a democratic service officer at the back adjusting the camera, pressing all the buttons, and we don't do that most of the time for hybrid meetings anyway. Realistically, you're right. We could do a hybrid meeting where we're all sat on our laptops in a room with our headphones on. Quite frankly, which wouldn't be for it is, you know, it beggars belief. We're back to where we were when we said, why the heck will we ever taken away the power to be able to have decision-making meetings held online where we actually had public participation all the time? And if we bear in mind earlier this evening, I know Councillor Perkins sent her apologies. She was logged in virtually because she is working this evening. And you know, she could spare the first half hour before she had to go into work, and then she had to go to work. And actually that made it more accessible for her to be able to take part. And okay, she didn't speak tonight, but that gave the opportunity. And I find that, you know, if we do go to a solid face-to-face, no hybrid to it, we're just discriminating against our own councillors that can't always be here.
Councillor Gould.
Could I suggest that maybe we explore the Baptist Church in Faversham, which has got Wi-Fi and a screen and a, you know, the services are broadcast over the internet each Sunday. So whether that might be something that would be a possibility of a venue that would have the facilities that would allow a hybrid meeting in Faversham. So you obviously would need to approach the church, but that is something that happens on a regular basis with internet access and a big screen.
We'll certainly contact them.
When we've got the equipment that Larissa spoke about earlier, then yes, certainly we can speak to them then.
They already have mics and you know, for broadcast, so you need to have the audio.
Larissa was talking about.
Sorry, through you, Chair, if I can get a time scale in the next day or so, if that's, we will make contact, and if that's possible, then, you know, it can be the inaugural. I just need to speak to ICT about the timing to see how quickly the owl can fly here.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you very much. Perhaps the Chief Executive would like to speak to Harry Potter and get Hedwig to do it. I don't quite understand. I mean, for instance, the Alexander Centre in Preston Street in Faversham has Wi-Fi and all the facilities. I don't understand why we can't have a meeting there. And we've had meetings also at West Faversham Community Centre. I don't understand why we can't hold a hybrid meeting in these other places.
Janet, could you answer that one, please?
Yes, you're right. We have had hybrid meetings in places like West Faversham Community Centre. However, we have to employ somebody externally to come in to do that. As you know, there's the extraordinary Sheppey meeting next week. So there is quite a substantial fee for this person to come in with the equipment to operate the equipment. That's the only way we can do it at the moment. And that's how we have done it previously. But I won't speak about budgets, so that's not for me to say. But obviously, if every area committee were to do that at the moment, it would be very costly.
So I think we're all in agreement that we would like a hybrid, because as we can see tonight, it does open this to more people who have got various issues of not being able to come into the chamber. But at the moment, the only hybrid we can do at the moment is in the chamber. So I think the decision we need to make is for the next meeting on the 22nd of March, do we agree that it will be here, and then going forward we can go with the owl and fly wherever we want to go? Is everyone in agreement of having it here on the 22nd as a hybrid? Right, so the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, 22nd March at 7 p.m. in the chamber here. So it is now 2040. Thank you very much for everyone who attended physically and virtually, and for the officers tonight for making this all possible. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a safe journey home. Good night.